You have merely glimpsed the edge of the abyss, but it is enough to trigger the cycle of revelation. Now, like me, you will begin to see things as they truly are.
And welcome back to more Darkest Dungeon. This is episode 44, week 115, getting underway. Alright, so no town event this week, but some foreboding narration from the ancestor Devatron. What is the cycle of revelation? What is he talking about? Alright, so we're back from our first assault on the Darkest Dungeon. The entire roster's stress has been relieved because we were successful. And you may notice the sky in the hamlet is kind of, blood moon or this red haze over everything. So things are changing. We're not quite sure what the cycle of revelation is or what he's talking about. But one thing you're going to notice is, look on the portraits on the right in the roster. Sometimes they'll look like, a screaming, eldritch horror over there. Look at Dismas, see that? And then when I hover over them, it kind of goes away. Also, when you interact with other interfaces in town, like say the blacksmith, or if we're in a store or something, you might notice little flashes of, poltergeist, eldritch type beings and whatnot. And I think it's just kind of gimmicky, but it is kind of a cool horror element. So be sure to look for that. Now we could try to posit a little, meta story for it, interpret it, if you will. The idea being that we're starting to see things as they truly are, and heroes and NPCs and other entities throughout the world are all sort of constituted to some degree or another of this evil horror lurking below. In other words, it's almost more of a metaphor for the fact that there's evil in all of us. It's a part of the world, it's a part of the universe, and in this game it's given this sort of amorphous, screaming eldritch form, and it's always sort of lurking there beneath the surface, and it's up to us to either indulge in it or sublimate it. And in that sense, the game is essentially about the age-old conflict between good and evil that exists within all of us, and how we choose to deal with it, and whether we follow a path of heroism or, in the case of our ancestor, a path of villainy. So as for the task at hand, lighting the way is, by a lot of people, considered to be the most difficult quest in the game. I'm not sure about that, but I certainly have it on the short list, like top 3. At any rate, it's tough, and a lot of why it's tough is that 3 of your heroes need to equip one of those Talisman of the Flame trinkets that we got from the last quest. And what those are going to do is prevent a certain enemy's attack from doing massive damage and stress damage. So you really need to equip those. But that means 3 of your heroes are down a trinket slot. So that's one thing that makes it hard. The other thing is that you have 4 heroes, so one hero is completely vulnerable to that attack. And because of that, you're forced to bring a guarding hero, like a man-at-arms, like we have here, or a Houndmaster. As for this composition, this isn't a downside at all, Devatron. You've seen this one before. Shieldbreaker Man-at-Arms Jester Vestal, with none other than Dive Buglin, the man-at-arms with 2 names. Let's go light the way.
The thing has no name, for it needs no language. Nevertheless, those who would submit to its wordless will are rewarded in a fashion. The creature's blessings are as repulsive as they are robust. Twisted, half-human monstrosities stalk the flesh-ridden halls, protecting their gestating god.
Okay, Devatron, man. This sounds pretty terrifying. Let's see what's in store for us down here.
Madness made flesh. It crawls steadily upward from the pit, supported by the lattice of cyclopean pillars. Mortality clarified in a single strike. Ears, blurred vision. The end approaches. Continue the onslaught. Destroy them all. Compassion is a rarity in the fevered pitch of battle. Is broken. Maintain the offensive.
Alright, so right off the bat, a really tough fight. Getting crit a lot, lots of stress damage. Now notice what I'm going to do here. I'm going to leave this cultist alone for a minute and use some extra rounds to heal up some of this stress and health damage before we move on. Disadvantage. Give them no quarter. Okay, so a nice job recovering at the end there. I think in last episode I mentioned that you can use the cultists to do that if you save one or two for the end. but you never really saw it because last dungeon we just kind of demolished it and it wasn't necessary. But obviously in this one we're going to have to do that quite a bit.
The wounds of war can be healed, but never hidden. As the fiend falls, a faint hope blossoms. Her death by inches. Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles. The ground quakes. Soothed. Sedated. As victories mount, so too will resistance.
Alright, so a really close call on our poor Jester there. Nearly got to death's door. Was able to guard him and heal him up. But yeah, you can see already this dungeon is way harder than the last one. Now, as for our route in here, you saw we did the room to the left, and we came back to the one to the right. Now we're going back to the center and up. This is all part of a pre-mapped out route aimed to maximize camping buffs once we're able to rest.
The blood quickens. Quickly the tide turns. A momentary abatement. Annihilated. These nightmarish creatures can be felled. They can be beaten.
Okay, a much easier fight there, but nice execution, especially with Vadavil's puncture ability. That bypasses guard if an enemy is being guarded, and then it debuffs them so they can't be guarded for another couple rounds. And that worked out well there. Okay, with those hallway fights out of the way, from this point on we can camp, and we'll have camping buffs for all the fights the rest of the way.
A spark without kindling is a goal without hope.
Now, if you recall, I mentioned last time there are no nighttime ambushes in the Darkest Dungeon maps, so you don't have to use any respite points preventing one of those. And as for our camping buffs, as always, we're going to use the lovely Man-at-Arms party buffs. The whole party gets buffed with dodge and crit, and then his 3 companions get buffed with bonuses to damage, and then there's a 75% chance for each companion that they get a further bonus to crit. And then with the last 4, we're only going to use 3, but we're going to increase our shield breakers maximum hit points and protection.
As the light gains purchase, spirits are lifted, and purpose is made clear.
Okay, so if my calculation is correct, there should be 8 fights remaining in the quest, including the 3 boss fights guarding the Iron Claws, which we need to activate for the quest.
A time to perform beyond one's limits. A momentary abatement. Brilliant confluence of skill and purpose. Success so clearly in view. Or is it merely a trick of the light?
Oh yeah. Always loved the first fight after resting with a man-at-arms. Everybody just starts critting their ass off. It's great. Okay, so the first of the 3 Iron Crowns is just through this door. And these boss fights are where you need that Talisman of the Flame equipped. And also you need to set up guard immediately on whichever hero doesn't have a Talisman of the Flame.
The light, the promise of safety.
Alright, Di Buglin's turn. Time to set up guard. Whoops, I forgot to set up guard. Big mistake. Okay, Revelation. That's the big attack that does massive damage and stress damage.
A dizzying blow to body and brain.
And it was just really lucky that he went after the Jester, who has a talisman, to block that attack instead of the Vestal, because I didn't set up guard like I should have. Now you notice there, it's the second time I've used Puncture from the Shield Breaker. It's not that the boss is guarded, but rather that move will pull an enemy forward. And I want the boss in the first couple ranks so that he can't use a certain attack.
Inspiration and improvement.
As you can see there, He can still use Revelation no matter what rank he's in, but there's a much more devastating area effect damage attack that he can't use if he's in rank 1 or 2. So that's why I keep trying to pull the boss into those early ranks. Alright, so he resisted the move there, so he may be able to get it off this next attack. Let's see.
Monstrous size has no intrinsic merit, unless inordinate exsanguination be considered a virtue.
Wrong choice, Mr. Boss. He went for Revelation. We've got the Talisman, and he attacked a riposting hero who just shoved it down his throat. Dive Buglin wins again.
Waits for the slightest lapse in concentration. Masterfully executed. This expedition at least promises success.
Alright, so the first Iron Crown activated. A pretty good boss fight there. You can see how they're going to go. I don't like talking over fights like that, but there's a lot of kind of nuance and detail that I felt you wouldn't have picked up on unless I explained it to you. As for those nuances, the Templar Warlord, which we fought there, you want to try to pull them into rank 1. There's another type called a Templar Impaler, and you want to push them back into rank 3 if you can.
The way is lit. The path is clear. We require only the strength to follow it. Well struck. Obliterated. precision and power. The slow death, unforeseen, unforgiving. A momentary abatement. Unnerved, unbalanced. Seize this momentum. Push on to the task's end.
All right, so that was the third fight since camping. So we should have one more fight, and then we'll camp again. And then if I'm correct about my calculation, there should only be 4 more fights the rest of the way. Hence, we'll have camping buffs for every fight after those first initial hallway fights that we cleared.
decimated. Great is the weapon that cuts on its own.
All right, just too easy. With 2 cultists to recover on, it's going to be a joke. Can't say enough good about the puncture ability, breaking guard. That just makes those fights trivial. All right, that was the 4th fight. Camping buffs have worn off. Let's camp again.
Gathered close in tenuous firelight and uneasy companionship.
Okay, so same thing on the camping buffs. Max hit points and protection on the shield breaker. And then the 2 party buffs from the man-at-arms, increasing dodge and crit, and then damage for his companions, and most likely a further boost to crit for his companions. This is pretty standard, especially when you don't have to prevent a nighttime ambush.
The match is struck. A blazing star is born. Singular strike. Eradicated. In Radiance, may we find victory. trifling victory, but a victory nonetheless.
So notice here I'm replacing Crush with Rampart on the Man-at-Arms. What that ability does, in addition to damage and stun, is it pushes an enemy back. So similar to how we used the Shieldbreaker's pull ability to pull the Templar Warlord into rank 1. Here we're facing an Impaler and we're going to want to push it back to rank 3 to prevent it from using a dangerous attack. Hey, I remembered to set up guard on the Vestal. Already a better start.
The wounds of war can be healed, but never hidden. Decisive pummeling.
Alright, Stinger Stab. That was the attack on the Jester there that we would like to avoid. If we can get him in rank 3, you're much better off. Unfortunately, our Man-at-Arms hasn't been able to use his push attack yet. He's been tied up with guarding and buffing and all kinds of other things.
Powerful blow. Prodigious size alone does not dissuade the sharpened blade. Remind yourself that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer.
Alright, so 2 of 3 down. Let's switch Die Buglin's skills back around. Unfortunately, we weren't able to execute our strategy there. But evidently it didn't really matter. We just crushed that Impaler and blasted through the fight, you know. So as we stroll these now empty hallways, you can see the method to Bee-Burner's madness vis-a-vis our initial route. If we hadn't cleared these hallways out when we first arrived, well, then we'd be bumping into those fights now. And it's not that those fights would be a problem now, it's just that it would cause our camping buffs to wear off, assuming we camped in the same spots, right? because remember, camping buffs only last for 4 battles. So by doing it this way, we got the hard work out of the way, doing those fights without buffs first, and that allowed us to just go the rest of the way with camping buffs for every fight.
Devastating blow. The wounds of war can be healed, but never hidden. Slowly, gently. This is how a life is taken. Impressive. Ghoulish horrors, brought low and driven into the mud.
Alright, so we're just about to the end. I guess I can see why people would consider this really hard. The enemies are very dangerous. You can have a really rough time in here, no doubt. But with, a little bit of planning and proper gearing and strategy, it's not that bad at all. This has been pretty much a breeze. Alright, so one more Iron Crown to go. Let's get buffed up and get in there and finish lighting the way, Devatron. Here we go. Oh, one of each, Devatron. Let's get to it. Nice. Already got him out of position.
Exposed to a killing blow. champion falls. Be wary. Triumphant pride precipitates a dizzying fall.
All right. Big time, Devatron. Yeah, the double Templar fight can be really rough. And as you can see, they can really beat you up. I mean, there were a few moments there where we needed to shuck and jive and be careful, but getting them out of position right away like that really helped out. All right, let's look at the quirks. Tone Deaf is bad on Vadaville. Less benefit from Inspiring Tune. Winded is bad. Fear of Mankind is bad. At the same time, we're probably not going to be adventuring with these heroes anymore, but we'll take care of these quirks. Darkest Dungeon, Devatron. Lighting the way. We are close, man. Only 2 left to go. Oh, yeah. We'll see you in the next episode.